the woman, our lady that's on the job. Commissioner Campione is not only one of the Lake County Commissioners, she also chairs the board. And she's going to discuss with us tonight pocketbook issues. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. And again, being in partnership with our county commissioners, with our school board members, they graciously accept our invitations to come and spend time with you. So please, let's give a strong welcome to Commissioner Leslie Campione.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here in this beautiful new building. I know the last time that I was with your group, we were down the street, and I don't think that building is there anymore. And a lot of people are happy that it's not there anymore. I don't know if you're like me, but singing the national anthem and watching those pictures on the screen, I just get overwhelmed. I'm just so thankful to be an American, and I am so thankful that there are people in this county and in this country like you that are willing to give up your time on a Thursday night to come out, participate in this democratic process, and the free exchange of ideas, look for solutions, and on the national front, staying focused on what we need to do to get this country back on the right track. So I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now, just thinking how nice it is to know that I think to a large degree we're kindred spirit. I know many of you in the room very well, and we kicked around issues in the past, and it's good to know that we're all in this fight together. This group has been, I think, a very steady force in our county. There have been other groups that have, peaked in their membership and then they've gone down, and there's been, a lot of different things going on. But the one thing I can say about this group is you all have been very steady in your support and getting us feedback as local officials. Needing feedback, you have offered that to us, you have called us, you have sent emails, so that's much appreciated. Now, I don't know about you, but did anybody get one of these in the last day or two?
Yeah.
I opened mine up, and I was expecting one thing, and boy, was I hit with a shock. This tax bill is actually in the city of Houston. And I saw an increase of almost $2,000, something like that. I was blown away, and I said to my husband, what do we get for this? And I was thinking, well, I'm a county commissioner, I need to be able to answer that question, right? I'm pretty close to the topic, and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, where does this money go, and what is it used for? And I tell you, I feel more committed than ever to figure out a way to do something about these numbers. We have challenges. You all know that we've seen a decline in our tax payments, essentially our property values. A roughly 38%, almost 40% decline in our property values, which translates into a 40% reduction in the revenues flowing in to local government. We have approximately 100,000 more residents today than we did 10 years ago in Lake County. So there are needs out there. There are local services that have to be addressed, and we're working off of a lot less revenue and a lot more people. Boy, I kind of sound like the sheriff, don't I? So it's tough, and there's challenges. And I'm hoping that tonight that we can delve into some details, and I can answer questions and things that are on your mind about these particular issues. I do want to, Fred gave me several items that he felt like I should hit. We may get to a point where I need to hear from you as far as prioritizing, but on my list is, of course, the topic of today, which is trash, economic development efforts, the property values, the ad valorem rates, all of the different tax sources, sales tax, gas tax, et cetera, the school impact fee issue, the Obamacare mandate and how that affects our county budget, and public assistance programs. So we have a whole lot of stuff that we talk about, and we may need to divide some of this up, and maybe we come back another time, or for those of you who, I don't know, we've got coffee, so we can stay for a while. But let's start with trash. Trash is a hot topic right now in Lake County. How many of you are outside of the city limits? Where do you live? Okay, good. So at least this is a relevant topic for you then. How many of you are happy with the service that you get now? Okay. I feel the same way. I'm in the unincorporated area. I get just like you. I get my trash picked up twice a week, and I can put the whole items out. Either one of those days. Oh, once a week? Okay. Yeah, you're in the city limits. Okay. So we get anything picked up, and we can also put as much as we want out there. So we have twice a week. We have trash. We have trucks on our roads twice a week. So what's going on is there's been many years. Knowing that the county's contract with the incinerator in Oklahoma was going to be coming to an end, and knowing that contracts with the haulers were going to be coming to an end in the same fiscal year, the county started working on this process of how are we going to move forward in the future with regard to hauling and disposing. And there was a task force that was set up, and they met, and they made 22 recommendations about how they thought things should be handled. And, without getting into all the nitty-gritty, because some of this might be easier to deal with by answering questions that you have. But the bottom line is when the RFP went out, the impression that we were given as county commissioners was that it was going to be a very flexible RFP where we would be able to consider a broad range of alternatives from the standpoint of where do we put the trash, do we bury it, do we burn it, do we do a combination of that. There was a general feel, though, in that report that we needed to focus our efforts on enhancing recycling so that we could lower the amount of volume in the trash stream itself, because that's what you have to pay to get rid of. And so there was a real focus on trying to get the recycling efforts enhanced. And so when the bids went out, or the RFP went out, I started hearing from some residents that were upset about this idea of going to once-a-week pickup. Because the idea behind once-a-week pickup is that you will give people two trash receptacles. One would be for the regular trash, one would be for the recycling. And because you only have those two trash containers, you would make a point to take your recycling things out and put them in that other one. Because otherwise you're just not going to have enough room to put your trash, and it's not going to get picked up. And so that's the concept behind it. So I started hearing from folks, a variety of people. Some in the rural areas, they were worried about their trash sitting around for a whole week, and the critters and the bears and all of that. And then other people that were in the retirement community, and they didn't like the idea of having to store these large trash containers in their garages, and they didn't like the idea of having to keep them there for a whole week. Knowing that they couldn't put their containers outside because of their deed restrictions and how small their lots were and so forth. So I went back to the board and I asked the board to reconsider how the RFP was drafted and do an amendment so that we could get pricing to have it both ways, and we could compare to see if we could keep the service the way we had it or make some modifications. And there wasn't support by the board at the time. And like I normally do on an issue I feel strong about, I tried to convince them to do that, but I couldn't convince them. So we went forward with that. The bids came in. Once we started, and we weren't allowed to talk to vendors, get any feedback during that time because there was a gag order coinciding with could hear from people, we started learning about problems in the process. One of the problems was the way that the RFP was drafted. There was no flexibility, so that, say, a company that had a recycling program in Eustis that seemed to be working very well, they were not allowed to put their proposal on the table to do trash pickup across Lake County using that program. And the cool thing about the Eustis program is that you get your county-issued trash cans, but you can also put extra bags out. So they make sure that your trash gets picked up, regardless of how much put out. And they also send some, they pick up bulk items, whatever they're put out. So we weren't allowed to even see what it would cost to do that in Lake County because the way this was so rigid. So the other thing that I found out was that our RFP required the companies to buy new automated trucks so that they would have to have this huge investment on the front end. And that translated in hauling prices that were coming in $3 to $4 more than our existing hauling prices. Okay, so that when you look at that on a per tonnage basis, we're talking about millions of dollars in difference. And then what that does to your trash bill at the end of the day, when you get it on your tax bill, ultimately that means it's going to go up. And you're going to get service that, in my case, and maybe some of you feel the same way, is going to be less service than we're getting today. Another big thing I worry about is the bulk items. You will have to call in order to get them picked up. Right now, you put them on the curb, they get them. If they're too big, they tag them, and they come back and get them the next day. In a rural county, that creates a real problem because people tend to dump their stuff in the woods, on the side of the road, when they can't get it picked up. And then, when the guy pulls up and picks up your one can, and you have some bags there, and he doesn't pick it up, what do you think somebody's going to do? I mean, you and I might make the effort to take this trash bag to a drop-off center, but there are a lot of folks in Lake County that will not do that, and we're going to see trash on the side of the road. So those are the kind of things that were bothering me, and the more we got into it, the more these things became very apparent to me, and I felt it was important to lead the charge, to throw out those bids and go back and redesign the program and try to get bids that would allow us to compare the services we're getting today, what that would cost, versus making certain changes, what that would cost, and we could get a better deal for our residents. One possibility would be to work with our existing haulers and our existing disposal facilities. There's also a possibility of doing that on a short-term basis while we redesign an RFP and go back out. But anyway, bottom line is I was on the end of that vote. I was the one that was in favor of throwing them out, and the other 4 voted to accept the contract. What happened between that time and now is that the contracts were put in front of me to sign with the chairman, and I could not in good conscience sign those contracts. So they have not been signed, and I have asked that on Tuesday they be brought back before the Board of County Commissioners and that the board vote to give someone else authorization to sign them because I will not sign them. So there's an opportunity that somebody that was on the other end of the vote could bring this back up because they have not been executed, and they could ask that we go back to the drawing board. And I'm hoping that that happens, but that will take the leadership of a couple of other county commissioners, or all of them. Technically we need 3 out of 5, and I can't make the motion. I was on the losing end, so it's up to the others to do that. So I'm really hoping, and I urge you to put pressure on them, because I think it's the right decision for Lake County. And I think what was done last Tuesday was a bad move financially, and it was bad from the standpoint of customer service and what we're going to get and how it's going to impact us personally and, on some of the concerns about people dumping their trash. That's a big deal. We're going to spend money dealing with that, if that ends up being a problem as well. So that's what's going on with trash. If you read the Orlando Sentinel on a regular basis and you read Lauren Ritchie's columns, you know that Lauren Ritchie does not like me.
She doesn't like anything.
I think it's a badge of honor, quite frankly. And if she started writing nice things about me, I would be very concerned. I don't know why. You know, there could be a whole bunch of reasons. I stand for things that are completely contrary to what she stands for politically. I'm a conservative female, and she's a liberal one. You know, I don't know why, but she doesn't like me, and she will do anything to hurt my credibility. And quite frankly, in that last article, I believe that she clearly went after my character. But I'm a public official, and that's just the world we live in. You got to take it. But I can tell you that the things that were written in that article are factually untrue. They're wrong. So I may write a letter to the editor. People have different schools of thought on that, whether I should speak out and put fuel on the fire and, you know, give her, you know, whatever, credence or something to honor her, the fact that she even wrote something and acknowledged she even exists. I don't know. I have to weigh that out, but I probably will at least send a letter to decide whether we're doing this. That's where we're at on that. I've got a fellow commissioner that's been taking like major stabs at me. I don't understand it, but that's what he does, what he's chosen to do. And I'm just hoping that just calms down, that we can all get along. My goal is that we all get along and that we don't become a board that is a spectacle, very much like the school board used to be when Mr. Connor was on the school board. And for many years, there was a lot of fighting, and we were in the newspaper, our county was in the newspaper all the time. So I'm just hoping that that's not where this is going, that we're always going to be in the spotlight because of that back and forth. And I can pledge to you, I will do my best to hold up my end of the bargain, that I am there to work together to the extent we can work together. And when I feel strongly about an issue, I will stand for my position, and I will stand firm, and I won't let someone's bullying push me down. And I owe that to you, the constituents of Lake County. So if that means that I have to get in the dirt a little bit, then so be it. I will do that if it's a matter of standing for what is right for the people of Lake County. Mom doesn't like that rolling around the dirt thing. She doesn't like that at all. So let's talk real quickly about, let's talk a little bit about economic development, because that's one of those areas that, you know, we're talking about the revenue side and then how we're spending your money for services for Lake County. And economic development is one of those areas. If we do things right, we have a chance to promote good economic activity in Lake County that helps us all, because it brings jobs and it helps our tax base. And you all know how all of that fits together. And so economic development, we've been doing some really cool things. We have had a lot of requests for information from companies that are looking to relocate, and we have responded to 6 major inquiries for very large companies. They're all in the pipeline. They're not things that we can talk about because there is a confidentiality requirement around those things, but just so you know, we are being looked at very hard by companies. The one complaint that I have heard over and over again, the one factor that is hurting us, is our workforce. Our workforce is somewhat limited, and that is really a function of the types of skills that companies are looking for, and the number of people we have in Lake County that are of the right age group, that have the right skill set, and so we're working on that. We're working with Lake Tech to expand some of their programs. We were fortunate to have Larry Metz and Senator Hayes assist Lake Tech in getting a allocation from the legislature this year to begin a program called the Advanced Center for Manufacturing in Lake County, and it's at the existing Lake Tech school, and they are working in conjunction, hopefully they're working quickly in conjunction with the school board to retrofit an existing building and school board funds in order to have this facility. But this is all about providing training for jobs like welding and advanced welding. and precision type technology. And so that's where our deficit is. We're finding out from existing companies in Lake County that they're going outside of Lake County to fill their needs. The orange juice company up in Leesburg, Petrali, they've had to go outside Lake County to fill. They have a plan where they're adding 250 jobs over the next, well, it started about a year ago. So in a 2 to 3 year time period, they're adding 250 jobs, and they've had to go outside of Lake County. So we've been able to work with Lake Tech and Catrali so that we can actually train people to do the things that they need, like, industrial refrigeration, forklift driving. We had several meetings with manufacturers in Lake County and found out that they didn't have any forklift drivers in Lake County, and we didn't have a program to train them. And so Lake Tech put that program in place. So that, to me, the most important thing we can do is facilitating the things that make it possible for us to get companies to come here and bring jobs. So we also have, I wanted to talk about the incubator program. We have 3 locations in Lake County, and one of them is here in South Lake. And we have the Small Business Development Corporation out of UCF that is there to assist businesses with working on business plans. They work with small businesses, answer questions, help them with just practical expertise to get them up and going. And that has become a very important part of our Lake County economic plan. That is to help small businesses grow or start out. We've had several expansions of companies in Lake County, and we've got one that I believe in October we can announce that has moved to Lake County, and it has a large number of jobs. Not huge number, like one company that was interested in Lake County was going to generate 2,500 jobs if they came to Lake County. Of course, you can imagine there was an issue there with could we produce the workforce? Could we, we made a case that we could, but we're not sure if we could completely. We got it down to 2 counties that they were looking at. So that's pretty neat. And if we don't get those, at least we know what our deficiencies are, and we know we can focus to try to get those opportunities. There's so many different issues. I know that we have a school board member here tonight. Maybe the impact the issue would be a good one to talk about. This is a tough one because last year we saw this coming fiscal year as we looked at what the property values were doing in Lake County and what our tax roll looked like. Basically a 0.22% bump, first time in years. Before then, everything was going down. So we see this minor bump in values. So my initial question to the property appraiser was, where did that come from? Was it just valuations? Did our values go up? Or was it new construction on the tax roll? The answer was, and was it commercial or was it residential? The answer was, it was primarily residential, new construction that was added to the tax roll, and most of it happened in South Lake County. So that tells you something, To a school board member, that tells them, we got more students that might be coming into our classrooms, and we know we've got issues. To a county commissioner, it tells me that we better be very careful that we don't do anything to upset this trend, because we need to see new activity. And right now, the interesting thing is that it's in the form of growth. How many years ago was it that we were all talking about, how do we slow down this growth? It's out of hand. It's out of control. And here we are. We need some new activity. So I hope one day we're back to a point where we're talking about, okay, let's get that right balance. But right now, if we don't see another bump, we're looking at some very, very difficult times in Lake County. And I don't know how you adjust that from a revenue side unless you start looking at, how are you going to generate the revenue to pay for the service? And we have fought really hard to keep the millage rate down, despite all of the different pressures for services. So that's going to be tough, and that's where, with the school impact fee thing, it becomes a real problem because the impact fee is put on the price of the home up front. And the school district's impact fee study finds, now whether you agree with this or not, this is what the study says, that it would take roughly $10,000 a new home in order to take care of new student stations associated with that new home. $10,000. So you're talking about the price of a home going up $10,000, and that's a big hit. And they're not that high in Orange County. I don't think they even have them in Osceola County. So now we're like competing, and we're definitely, you know, putting ourselves in a position where our product is a lot more expensive than adjoining counties. So an idea was floated that we could use an assessment so that it wouldn't be this huge hit right up front, that you would spread it out over a number of years, and this new homeowner would pay this assessment over a period of time. Well, think about it. If you took the $10,000 impact fee, and let's assume that that's the right amount, because you can spread it over time, and it's going to, you may have to relook at whether you're upfront charging the right amount because you're spreading it out over a long period of time. So let's go with $10,000 for 10 years. That's $1,000 a year that property owner would have in addition to their tax bill. That's a big hit. So this is a tough one because we're tinkering with the economics, we're tinkering with the market, and yet we have this need to build, either replace schools that need to be replaced or build new capacity for students coming online. And you know, I know that we need to address the problem, but you know, getting our two boards together to look for solutions, I think that, I may have said it to you the other day, Bill, but each one of our boards is dysfunctional in its own right, and now you're going to put us all together in one room and look for a solution. This is going to be tough, but right now our plan is to have a joint meeting with the school board. I'm going to ask the board on Tuesday to try to move it up as soon as possible, and roll up our sleeves and see if we can work through this issue. But you know, my feeling about the cost of building schools and the specs that have been used in the past, I find it hard to believe that we can't get the school construction price down. We don't need Cadillac schools. That's how I feel about it. I have a hard time wanting to fund a program when I know that there's lots of bells and whistles that we really don't need, and there's just other ways to do construction to get the prices down. And that's something that I think is an important part of this equation. Looking at ways to retrofit existing schools so that perhaps you can add classrooms. I think we need to look at everything out there to try to get the cost of this down, because I think we're going to hurt our economy. I think it's going to hurt all of us. Because if we don't have any type of activity, you know what that means. I mean, it hurts all of us. And if we cause Lake County to go backwards as a result of putting an inordinate burden on new construction, we all pay for that. So that's a tough one. Obamacare, just so you know, and hopefully the thing is just totally unraveling. But just so you know, as it stands now, Lake County government, your taxes, last year paid $4,300,000 roughly for Medicaid bills for Lake County residents. By law, we have to pick up the cost of a Lake County resident on Medicaid if you're in the hospital on the 10th day through the 45th day. And we also have to pay nursing home bills. So that's a big chunk. And with Obamacare, that number goes up. There's no way around that. So that's coming out of that pot that all of our tax money is going into. A lot of us complain that our state government has failed us because we're one of the only states where that charge is passed to the local government. In other states, that's handled at the state level. But that's what our legislature has done. Now, of course, other states have income taxes and other ways of generating revenue. But essentially what they've done is they put it on the property tax, side. So that's tough. Inmate medical care in Lake County, we have a county jail. We have to take care of the inmates that go to see a doctor while they're incarcerated or go to the hospital. Last year, almost $2 million was spent on inmates. Now, I've worked really hard with the sheriff on this to try to figure out how to get this down. And we have a contract, an agreement in place right now with Leesburg Regional where they're taking those inmates at a much lower rate than the other hospitals were doing. But in October, we're going to be entering into a contract, or at least it'll start in October, with a company that the sheriff has hired in conjunction with the county commission to take over all of his medical needs of the inmates. So they will be in charge of only getting into the hospital if they absolutely need to, overseeing their doctor's visits. So we're hoping to see a significant reduction in that number, maybe 30-40% if all goes well. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. And a while back, I brought up the idea of what can we do with the county jail to save money, and I suggested this idea of what aspects could we use private companies to help with, and of course, all hell broke loose because the rumor was out there that I wanted to privatize the jail and bring in a company to run the jail. Well, this is exactly the type of thing I was referring to. Because right now, all of these people that take care of the inmates actually in that facility, because the sheriff has his own amount, it's about $2 million in his budget that is medical care provided actually in the jail itself. What we pay is once the prisoner goes out of the jail. And so, this was exactly what I was referring to, and now instead of having his own employees that are on state pensions and have all of the benefits of state employees, it will be a private company that will be responsible for this workforce that will be taking care of the inmates' medical needs. So that's a huge step in the right direction. So I'm really excited about that, because I think that we're going to see some savings there. Just so you know, some of the things that we spend money on for health and human services or health and social services, we provide about $900,000 a year to LifeStream Behavioral Center, and they provide for mental health issues. They are our provider in Lake County. They do an exceptionally wonderful job. And in so many cases, if they can, if patients can be treated through LifeStream, we avoid having them end up in the county jail where they're not going to get the actual help that they need. And we save money. We save money. So this is money well spent with LifeStream. And they leverage that. They're able to use that money to bring in money from the state of Florida in order to take care of mental health needs for all of our residents in Lake County. We actually have $75,000 every year that Lake County pays for cremation and burial assistance for the indigent. Because you have situations where the coroner is there and there's nobody available to take care of someone after they die, the family can't, and so we have to take care of it. So those are one of those things that, until I got into this job, I had no idea that we were doing that, but obviously that's one of those things that we have to do. Public services and social services, we can get into that more if you want later on. There's so many hot topics, but one thing you do need to know that I think may be a misperception is that most of the programs the county government operates that are social programs in nature are pass-through programs. So that your tax dollars are not being used, your property tax dollars are not being used for these programs. An example would be Section 8 housing. That, as you know, is a federal program. Well, we have a person in Lake County that assists with taking requests from people for houses that qualify for Section 8 which is really impoverished. You have to be below the poverty level. And we have about 500 cases in Lake County with a place and different rental facilities and so forth. And as I understand it, if we didn't do that as county government and another agency like, or even a 501c3 not-for-profit step up to do it, they would get 1/4 of the money that we get. So by doing it in county government, we're able to bring more money to Lake County for this need. So you can weigh out whether you think this is something that we should be doing or not. I think that we should, because a lot of these cases are cases where you have families and you have kids that are going to be going to our public schools, and to make sure that they have a roof over their head. I did get some feedback from a group I talked to recently that said, look into how they qualify people for these programs. Make sure that people were not perpetuating, generational dependency. And I thought that was a valid point. And I think that's something that we could do locally, even though, there's all these rules that we have to follow because it's a federal program. I think that is a valid point that we locally could get more involved with making sure that we're getting that assistance to the families that are really looking for a hand up, and it's more of a temporary situation, so forth, than this ongoing family after family or generation after generation is just using this as their living accommodation. So, you all want to move on to questions at this point? Yes, sir.
I'll get it was like the system was pledged for a contract that major goes out and you as a commissioner don't know what's in it.
Kind of like Obamacare.
Yeah. So it sounds like the commissioner, like you said, you all know do a vote. So explain to me how major subcontract requests or professional services that big will go out, and as the commission chairman, you don't know what's in it.
Well, what the point was, when you have a contract that big, and it's gone out to bid, and now we're saying as commissioners, or I'm saying as one commissioner for sure, that we didn't necessarily know what was in it, and now we're saying, wait a minute, this is not what we thought it was going to be. My answer to that would be that when you're dealing with procurement issues, you have people on staff that are procurement experts. This is what they do, they write these things. There was a citizens committee that made recommendations. It was explained to us that those recommendations were embedded in this RFP, and that there was sufficient flexibility to allow various alternatives to be submitted. So when the bids came in, and we didn't have the alternatives that we thought we were going to be allowed to have, that's really where, everything kind of hit the fan. And when there's also the issue, too, of getting feedback from people who said, this program, as you describe it, is not what we want as residents. So there's kind of two issues going on. And then there's the cost side of it. It's very difficult for someone like me. I'm not a garbage expert. I know that I like to have my garbage picked up on time, and that I want good customer service. But when it comes to all the nitty-gritty of the details, understanding that requiring automated trucks up front was this huge capital outlay. For me, I wouldn't know whether Waste Management already had automated trucks or didn't. But to a garbage expert, and the county hired a garbage expert, they would know that. So they would know that that would impact the ultimate cost of the pricing that came in. So those were the things that, as it all came to be, it became apparent that, in my opinion, the RFP was too inflexible, and the people that administered it did not allow sufficient flexibility for the bids. And, okay, Curt. Curt was on that committee, so he might be able to shed some light.
I'm not here to give her cover, don't worry, she's not going anywhere. Most of you know me. My name is Curt Binney. I'm a CPA, and I'm also a fraud examiner, so that can come into play with some of your questions. I was chairman of the Citizens Task Force that Commissioner Campione spoke about. And we met for 18 months, and we looked at everything. And before you start looking for my card / my tires, let me go through and explain what happened. We looked at options like plasma, we looked at options like composting, we looked at recycling, we looked at all these different options so we could give the commissioners some recommendations. And most of them were pretty good recommendations. We think you should look at this, we think you should continue this program. We think you should continue universal collection, and universal collection basically is the county manages the whole program, you pay one time on your tax bill, and the county takes it from there, and you don't have to deal with a monthly bill. Those of you that live down here, if you remember before Waste Management when Viola was there and they were billing you at your house, it wasn't a good time. You know, there was a lot of problems. So those are the kind of things we were looking at. Now there were two recommendations that we made that were the problematic ones. The first one was a recommendation to go to this automated system where you have a truck with one driver and an arm, and it picks up your trash can and dumps it in the back. Like Bob said, it comes once a week and picks up your trash can. Some people it was, as Commissioner Campione said, a way to get you to go from recycling in the trash can to recycling in recycle bin, because there's only about a 30% participation rate in recycling. For me, it was some representations by haulers, representations by staff and experts, that it was more cost effective for the county to do it that way because you only had one driver, your labor costs would go down, stuff like that. Being a math guy, as Commissioner Campione said, buying a whole fleet of new trucks, buying about 130,000 hobos, and spreading that cost over 7 years didn't really make an economic sense to me. But I recommended, let's go out and get a bid to do that. You know, so a lot of that was based on just being able to get some comparisons so the commissioners could make some judgment decisions. The second and more controversial part was what they call the 1-1-1 decision. That's where they went from 2 days of trash pickup for unincorporated Lake County and 1 day of recycling to 1 day of pickup, 1 day of recycling, and 1 day of trash. Well, I'm the only person that thought that was a bad idea, unfortunately. Because if you live in a large community like Palisades, like Plantations, like Hawthorne, you fall into probably one of 2 or 3 different groups. You probably either pay somebody to cut your grass and trim your trees, or you only do it, you know, once or twice a year when it's cool. So there's not a whole lot of compostable material that comes out of your yard that would justify losing something. Okay. And this is what the big argument for me is. If I'm going to recommend that you lose a day, which I did, lose something, which is half of your service, what are you getting in exchange? You would think if I took away half of your service, I would give you a better rate, right? No. The current rate right now increases the fee the county pays by $750,000. The chairman has fought this for a year. She's been dealing with this and saying this doesn't look like it's going to be a good idea and things like that. There's also some other if I can just talk about my concerns as far as economics. I went out and I looked, and some of you might have read the Right Side of the Lake article, and a lot of those numbers are right. It looks like if the county doesn't lay off half of its workforce, there'll be about a $2 million a year loss in the landfill enterprise. Now, an enterprise in the government is a utility that's supposed to be treated like a business. You're supposed to run it to make money or at least break even. So a $2 million or a $16 million over the life of the contract loss, to me, doesn't sound like a sweet deal, especially if you're losing 50% of your service. So the chairman led the fight on that, and we've been dealing with it, the fallout of that last Tuesday, and we're hoping that there may be some reconsideration next week. You may have heard that there's also some questions about the way the RFP process, and this gets to your question, sir. And that is, what happens on an RFP, I'm a governmental auditor, so I can speak to this a little better, is the elected body said, we want this. We want you to lay out, go out to vendors and get prices on certain things. Okay? And so the staff went out and Although I don't agree with it, they asked for certain things that didn't really give us a lot of flexibility. They didn't go out and they looked, we as a committee asked, well, what about selling the landfill that we pay almost $2 million a year in maintenance for? You know, sell that to a private company, let them manage it. You know, we'd like, you know, we just spent $20-some-odd million on Covanta, the incinerator, which is the best way to minimize the trash in your landfill because it takes 10 tons of trash and makes it into 1 ton of ash. So that increases the life of a landfill by 10 years. Those type of things really weren't incorporated into this RFP. Okay. When the RFP was brought to the county commission, and for those of you, RFP stands for request for proposal, they went out to get bids. They brought them in, they had 3 staff members review it. Okay. When those staff members reviewed it, it was I hate to say it, but a flawed process. It was not a good product. I speak for as an auditor, as a governmental accountant, as a member of the task force, and as a citizen. It's not a good product for us. It focused only on this automated system like they have in cities, which, if you think about it, it doesn't make economic sense to have 2 sets of trucks, because you still have to have a rear loader to do the compost day. You still have to have the same amount of people that you have today to do a compost day. And the RFP specifically forbid anybody to come up with an alternative, a better idea, which is what we wanted them to do. Here's an example of a better idea. There's a proposal out there right now by a hauler and by Covanta to do what's called a super stream or multi-stream. And basically what would happen is you'd have 1 trash can. Doesn't have to be a hobo, it could just be a regular trash can. They would come by, they would get all your trash, throw it in the back of the... Oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, you can have as many trash cans as you want, and you have 2-day pickup. Okay. But they would throw all your trash into 1 truck, including recycling. That doesn't mean you're not going to recycle. They would take it to Covanta, and they would spread it out, they would pull it out, they would do it, they would get the recycling over here, handle recycling like we've been doing, and they would burn the rest, put the ash into an ash monofield, what's called Class 3 landfill. And they claim, and I offer the word is claim, they can do it for less, not less than the contract that they just passed, less than we paid last year. But they were not allowed to provide that to the commission. Okay, because the RFP forbid them. And as the chairman told you, she tried to get the RFP changed. Now, I'm not here to defend her. I want to give some independent analysis of what happened. In any government, the government has to rely on staff. She cannot be a garbage expert any more than I can be a lawyer. Okay? So the people that are in the staff have, she has to have the confidence that what they're telling her is thorough and complete and what they're expecting to get. And in this case, Curt's opinion, that didn't happen. So when that doesn't happen and as many people are saying there's something wrong with this program as possible, then we need to take a step back and look at it. And I'm hoping that they do. Because I don't think it's a good idea whether you live in Kings Ridge or not, because what's going to happen is a $2 million loss in the enterprise fund, it's got to come from somewhere, okay? And you still pay county taxes, Bob. So, and keep in mind that when you move into a city that has 1 day a week pickup, and I won't take any more of your time, but I just wanted to give you some perspective with them. You move in knowing that. But what I told most of the commissioners was, you're taking something away from people. Show them why you're doing it, and make sure that they understand that it either has to be done or it benefits them. Doesn't matter. So I think that's
So one thing about that recycling program that Covanta has put on the table that we didn't get to look at is that they describe it as 100% recycling. What we would have otherwise is whatever percentage of people choose to recycle and how diligently they do it, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 40%, if we're lucky. But the Covanta idea is actually 100%, because what they'll do is they have this new technology that allows them to do the sorting, and then they make money by being able to sell that recycling material. So they're not just going to stick it in the incinerator and burn it. They have every incentive to get the recycling items out of there so they can sell it. So, you know, it's kind of a cool concept. At least it's worthy of taking a look at. Here and then on.
How did we get this RFP that was so narrow in its scope? Because that's not meeting our needs. How did they get away with that?
Well, I think that goes back to what Curt said.
Sure.
I think that goes to what Curt said, is that you have people working on it that have expertise, and for whatever reason, they decided that they, you know, it comes down to what they call specifications, and their specifications can be very, very technical, and unless you understand all the ins and outs of, I'll call them specs, then it'd be very difficult for somebody who's not an expert to understand exactly what's being asked for and what could be submitted in return. So, well, there's one more shot, there's one more bite of the apple if the board wants to do something about it on Tuesday. If they don't, then yes, we are stuck with it for 7 years, and that stinks.
Can't hear you. Use the microphone.
Yes, sir. I can yell too. I don't need a microphone. I was just going to say that.
Use the microphone.
I was just going to. Can y'all
Please.
hear me?
No.
I was just going to say that in our modern times, the more we recycle, the less trash we make. So has that been taken into consideration? Because we don't make that much trash in my family. It's a lot of recycling.
Right.
So
Well,
that's got to make a difference.
well, that's the concept behind lowering your trash stream and enhancing your recycling, is that you can actually put your recycling items back into use, and we're not sticking them in a landfill, or in the case of an incinerator, we're not burning them and then having, you know, a byproduct that we still have to bury or do something with. But there's actually, I've heard ideas or proposals for this leachate that comes out of the incinerator, that they can actually take that and put it back in to cool the, you know, different aspects of the incinerator itself. So new technology is developing all of the time. But I go back to, I know everybody feels really good, and I don't even know if this thing will get reconsidered, and there's a chance that that's even a possibility. Maybe 7 years from now, this will be a possibility that we don't know until next week, or until, you know, the status quo changes with regard to what happened last week. But I know we all feel good about, like, pulling our stuff out and sticking it in our own little recycling bin, like we've done our part. But if you think about the other concept, which is just put it all in there and let them sort it, it'd be one thing if we were paying more for them to sort it, but we'd actually be paying less. And the reason being is that you wouldn't be sending trucks out, a whole separate set of trucks to go get that recycling. You'd be doing the sorting, so they'd be doing the sorting for us. So I think that we kind of are all in this mindset that it's automatically better when we do the recycling and we separate it, when in reality it may very well be more economical to do it the other way. So, but again, I don't know whether that will get put on the table as consideration.
Leslie, the staff took a particular process, okay, for this RFP, and is there a reason why? I mean, is there a reason why they limit it? I can't see them saying, well, let's really screw this up and limit. And you know, so there has to be some methodology behind what they did. Do you know what that is?
No, I mean, I think that we all come to situations with our own life experiences, which translate sometimes into biases. And whether we'll recognize that we have biases or not, we have them. So perhaps there was a mindset, you know, and that's always a possibility. And that's why the product that was generated was the result of someone's mindset about how things should be. There's no way for me to know that other than to say the product, well, just like we said before, it allowed for very little flexibility.
I think one of the problems was, I hope you can hear me. First off, your recycling point, that was one of the goals, was to get as much volume down in the landfills as possible. Because that way the landfill must, whether it's an incinerator or a landfill, it costs us less if we have our mines down. That was our focus, okay? Volume reduction. Now, we didn't say this is the only way to do it. What we said is, let's get volume reduction down. This is one way to do it. Now, this is what the Commissioner's talking about, this Covanza program, that could take us from 30% up to 80 or 90%, because what it does is the people that don't recycle, it picks up the slack for them. The people that miss half of what they could recycle, it picks that up for them also. So it's a great program. But I think there's a communication thing that got really, really screwed up somewhere. Because as I said, my goal was, if we can do the automated and it saves money, okay, fine. But if it doesn't, don't cost us money getting some arbitrary reason and sticking with it. And nobody from my task force was involved in the RFP to say, hey, wait a minute, that's not really what we meant, because we weren't asked. So I think it was actually...
Right, and that's probably a good learning point from all of this, is that when you do something this large, and you've had a citizens committee work on it for so long, that you should then have oversight by that same committee, walk them through it, and see if they believe the product reflects what they worked on for all that time. So I think that's a good thing that we can at least take away to do differently, you know, in the future.
So what are we stuck with? What do we do if we don't know what the plan, what the program is?
What's that?
What are we now stuck with?
Okay, if it doesn't get reversed, or at least put on hold and relooked at, the plan will be, starting October of next year, you will have a trash can year issued for your garbage, and you will have a trash can year issued for your recycling. And they will come on one day, and one round of trucks will come and pick up your trash, and then sometime later in the day, you will get your recycling picked up. Then you will have another day when you put your yard waste out. And they can't take plastic bags, so they will literally have to, people have stuck their yard waste in plastic bags, they'll have to undo them and all of that, but that will be your yard waste day. And then if you have something big you need picked up, you will have to call and get it scheduled. And that's what it'll be in the future. And you can't put extra bags out. On your one day of pickup of your regular kitchen trash, no bags, no extra bags. You could pay extra and get another trash can or a third trash can. You could pay extra and get that. We haven't been told what that extra price would be, but you would have to do that as an additional add-on.
I have a question. You have the right mindset on the right situation. The other commissioners, are there 3 or 4?
4 others.
4 of them. Now, do they know the issue? Are they really familiar to vote no? I mean, to vote yes for the whole thing when we stop?
I was hoping that there's been a lot of attention to this over the last couple days or weeks, that they're getting that information if they didn't consider it before. So it really comes down to people getting a hold of them and talking to them, but also people that understand this, the details of it. People like Curt that are willing to take the time to say, hey, can I come down and sit with you and walk you through this? We've also been able to meet with vendors now because we had that code of silence. So now we know that if, for example, well, let's see, we know that the tonnage, the rate for hauling on this RFP was $3 to $4 more a ton than what we have now. We know that now because we were able to talk to the vendors and get the information. So, you know, something was said about, and this was actually Warren Ritchie was talking about changing your path or asking for something to be reconsidered, or, you know. At what point does a county commissioner get to say, oh, I can't consider that anymore? I mean, at what point? I mean, aren't you allowed right up until that time you take your vote to say, you know what, last week I had it wrong. This week I got some more information and I figured it out. So that's ridiculous to suggest that you can't come forward and say, we got a problem, we need to stop, we need to fix it. So I would say that between now and Tuesday, there's plenty of opportunities for these guys to see that we've got something in motion here we need to stop.
Right, let's not do like Pelosi, let's sign it and we'll see later.
That's right. I know, I kept seeing all of these these, similarities to the whole. But there is one other thing you need to know, and that is that the plan is to wait until 2015 to increase all of our garbage bills. The plan is to take $2 million out of reserves from the enterprise fund in order to pay the additional cost of this program for a year. So I guess the thinking is, let's get everybody used to it and accustomed to it, and then we'll hit them with the extra charge. To me, that is just like Obamacare. That is wrong.
It's totally wrong. And so these four people, we know who they are.
Now, if I could say one other thing, I'm not defending the other.
One of them is Jim
But
Miller.
one of the things that was a selling point for them was even though it's $750,000 more on the hauler side, people that pick up from your street, there was a huge reduction, well, not a huge reduction, because you weren't paying for disposal, because you were paying for the debt service on these things. But the low bidder on the disposal, the landfill side, was 56% lower than the second bidder. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. You go out and you get bids for someone to come work at your house. If someone is that much lower than everybody else, are you going to let them work on your house?
No.
Because and it looks now, there's some serious questions about, this guy had a contract with Berrien County, which he's asked them to stop bringing trash there so he can save money, because his sweetheart deal with Berrien County, he can't afford to do, in my opinion. So, if somebody tells you we got a sweetheart deal on this side, that's why you're paying, we're doing this more, so it's not going to cost you. It's going to cost you.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because that was one, for me, that was one of the big red flags I saw. When that was so much lower, I thought, what in the world is going on? How could it be that much lower? So ordinarily, you throw that out. I mean, you find out why is it that it's so low. And I think we're finding out now. Jim?
I'll share with you, I had breakfast with General Sullivan.
No, you can't share with me. No. No, I'm
No.
here. If I wasn't here, you could tell them. But you cannot tell me about any conversation that...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can leave and you can talk to the group about it, but
Just for a second.
Vanished from the room.
He said he's willing to put it back on the table. He understands that Commissioner Sullivan was part of this district down here. Anyway, he is ready to put it back on the table.
It's all
So you only have to get one of the other three, then you're so you get Connor, Cadwell, or...
only a breakfast, then he flips his vote.
Let me explain that some of you may or may not know, and this applies both to the county commissioners and to the school board. Very seldom, if ever, you will see two county commissioners in the same meeting, unsanctioned meeting. And that's because Florida has what they call the sunshine law. They're not allowed to do that by law. By Florida law, they cannot have hallway meetings. Okay? The only time that they can sit and talk to each other is at a sanctioned meeting, whether it be a school board meeting or a county commissioners meeting. That's why Leslie had to step out, because she was going to hear something, okay, that as a non-sanctioned meeting, she would not be allowed to hear. It's not that because she doesn't like us.
What if you watch a video that shows that, though?
Well, I better not watch it. I won't, because I take that very seriously. That's one of the reasons why these meetings are so, sometimes they get contentious, because you don't have a chance until you get to that meeting to actually have a face-to-face conversation with your fellow commissioners. So, it's an inefficient way to do things, but it does force us to do everything in the sunshine at a public meeting where everyone, can come and hear if they want to hear it. Yes, sir.
These were bids that you asked for,
Bids,
and you haven't signed any of them, but was one accepted?
Yes, 4 were accepted.
4 were accepted.
There will be a different hauler in the 3 different regions of the county, and then this landfill that was described in Sumter County would be the landfill where the county's trash is buried. But if they haven't been signed, they haven't been executed, so they're not, it's not a contract yet.
How do you stand legally? You accepted the bids?
I have been told that because they haven't been signed, that the board can change its mind.
Okay, then what does the other counties have to do with it?
Was this a
group?
Oh, no, the other counties, here's what happened, is there is a senator in, I think it's Inverness County or Citrus County, who got into the landfill business. And he went out and he got this property in Sumter County.
Just,
Oh, it's his son, okay. And apparently one of his investors or partners is a county commissioner, or is on his board, is a county commissioner over there. I just find that all very interesting. Not that it's necessarily relevant, it's interesting. And they go to Sumter County to get a landfill permitted. The Board of County Commissioners in Sumter County, I think it was about 18 months long period, they didn't want it. They had hearings and they wouldn't approve it. So the city of Bushnell in Sumter County annexed the property. And there was a lot of controversy because it's fairly close to a big lake over there called Lake Peninsula. And Bushnell approved it. All right, part of that deal to do the landfill involved $20 million worth of investment money from Marion County. So it is kind of, if you think about it, Marion County's investing to build a landfill in Sumter County so that then Lake County can go over there and dump our trash in our next door neighbor's backyard. It's just, it's an interesting scenario.
Well, I just have one other question, real quick. Is 7 years, is that the norm for a contract?
Yeah, it's not unusual for hauling contracts.
It had to be 7 years, because if you remember, the nature of the contract was they were buying new trucks, and they were buying 120,000 hobos. So the only way they could make any money was to spread the cost of all that new capital addition over an extended period, because we couldn't pay for all that at once. You'd have a $500 utility bill.
Yeah, there's also a clause that I saw in the contract that really caused me concern, which went into my whole analysis of what came back to us for approval, and that was a clause in the disposal contract that said that they could come back to the county if they needed an extraordinary rate increase. And we could say no, but you know what that means. At that point, you need a place to put your trash. So that clause is different than an act of God or a change in law or, CPI, the things that you usually put into contracts to cover those contingencies. This one was very unique. Now, of course, it was put in all the contracts under this deal, but I think it's very odd. And I don't like it, and you know where I stand.
Comment. I just got some information from one of my neighbors about the incinerator that was built approximately 25 years ago.
Speak in the mic, please.
In the mic.
I'm in the mic. Supposedly in Fort Lauderdale, when they incinerate garbage, that garbage produces electricity.
Oh, it does here too. They make electricity, and we've gotten paid for that electricity. That's been part of the deal with Covanta, is that they would pay the county an electricity type commission.
So that's great. The other thing is, I moved from Fort Lauderdale to here 4 years ago, and we had waste management, just like we have here. They have the supposedly armed truck, and one driver comes by, picks up the garbage from containers that they gave us, but it's twice a week.
Oh.
And a separate truck comes for the recyclable material. So, just as an example, on Monday they come in, they pick up the recycle and the trash, and then on Thursday they pick up just the trash. But you're also talking about garden waste.
Another day.
Yeah, but what container do you use for the garden
Nothing.
waste?
You're not supposed to use anything. So ideally, people will just pile it up on the edge of the
So
road.
kind of like bulk, like a bulk pickup. That's what I want to ask. Thank you.
I have one quick question. The bottom line is, whether we live in the city of Clermont, which this would not affect us at all, we would still have to pay more probably because we have to buy the trucks, or the county just...
Well, this is the way it works, is that the goal, I think, is to have your solid waste program be an enterprise program, so that you're covering your costs for that program, and you don't have to go to your general fund, which is your property taxes, to pay the shortfall. Our concern, my concern, is that there will be a shortfall, we won't be able to cover it with our assessment, and then it will go to the general fund, and everybody that's a taxpayer in Lake County, whether you're in the city limits or in the county, will have to pick up that difference. So that's how it affects you as a city resident.
If you look at the city of Clermont, you were already subsidizing the solid waste facility because they were using general, and they have been for 20 years, using general revenues to pay the debt service on the incinerator. And when you went and dumped the city of Clermont dumps their trash, the incinerator, because it was an agreement for them to do that, they were being charged a dividend.
Right. And I want something to be clear for those of you that were in Lake County at the time that that incinerator was approved or you've read about it, it has a shady past. There is no question about it. All right? But that is years and years ago. Many years later, the contract was renegotiated. And it was, the county was put in a much better position. But there were bonds that were issued to build that incinerator, and a lot of people believe that the county was supposed to own it at the end of the, when those bonds were retired. But that's not how the deal was structured. So there was a lot of stuff going on. So I want to be clear that I'm not condoning or suggesting that any of that stuff was okay. That was bad, but now we have this thing, this incinerator, that's actually an asset. From the standpoint that many counties would love to have that in their county so that they could burn their trash instead of bury it. And the fact that it's so close makes it so that the hauling charges to get there aren't nearly what they'd be if we had to drive 3 hours away to get to it. So, my point is that we have it, it's here. The company that operates it now has a very good reputation. They have about 70 employees that make very high salaries. When you compare to other salaries in Lake County, these are high-wage jobs, and there's about 70 of these jobs. So we don't know what will ultimately happen. Will they downsize their operations when they no longer have Lake County's trash to burn? There's no way to really know, but there's possible, it is possible that there might be an economic impact in that regard.
What is the status of the landfill in Tavares?
Okay, the landfill apparently has about 18 years of life if the county wanted to use it as a landfill. And I think the current cell has about 2.5 years of life for purposes of taking care of the ash that would come from the incinerator if that contract were to be extended. So, of course, we get paid to take that ash. So there is a revenue side of that. And we will, when we're no longer using the landfill to the extent that it's being used now for those types of things and for yard trash and so forth, we will, and then Curt alluded to this, there will be a reduction in the workforce. So we will be, obviously getting rid of people that currently work for the county in that capacity.
And it costs us about $2 million a year just to have that landfill, even if we don't use it.
Because you have to keep up with all of the regulatory stuff. You've got to do a whole bunch of ongoing upkeep. So you still have costs involved with having it. The nice thing about having it and not using it, to the extent that you still have to take care of it, that you lower your costs as much as possible, it's a fallback plan. It's something you could use if you needed to, but it puts you in a better position when you are negotiating with other disposal entities. So in that regard, it's a good thing to have, but in my opinion, a good thing to have, but not to use. Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Folks?